Step 9 this week. Step 9 with makeup. This is leftover from yesterday's shoot and I can't get it off, so you're gonna have to deal with that as well. I also want to say I've been doing so much better this week. Thank you so much for all your amazing comments, and it's incredible to me that you guys are so caring and you've reached out asking me how I've been doing and I was struggling. But depression is like that, isn't it? And I feel like I'm definitely turning a corner and I'm doing this light therapy, which really seems to be working. I'm feeling better and I feel hopeful about everything. So that's good. So this week's step 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. This step basically means you have to make amends to everyone who you've hurt. In our step 8, we made a list of everyone and we became willing, hopefully, by doing a step 8 and looking at all the entries on there. So hopefully we've done some soul searching and we've really dug into all the people we've hurt. And step 9 is where we make direct amends. So the exciting thing about step 9 is the very first meetings that I went to in Alcoholics Anonymous when I first got sober in London were called promises meetings. And there's a portion of the big book which talks about the promises. Now the promises that meeting was based on are all written about in the big book in step 9. So when you get to step 9 in the big book, into action, it says this. Check this out. This is about step 9. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, step 9, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through, step 9. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. Or maybe this. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. Now, I'd never known peace up until this moment. It's been, I'm either high or I'm wanting to get high. There was no peace. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. So stuff that's happened stuff that we've done is going to be helpful to someone else. When I relapsed after 10 years, I felt so much shame. And someone pointed out, your experience with this relapse is going to benefit other people. So it's valuable. That feeling of uselessness and of self-pity will disappear. That sounds good. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. So spiritual experience, spiritual change, spiritual shift there. And that can be very subtle, or it can be a very dramatic thing, but everyone will have some kind of shift here, I think. I did. Check these promises out. Fear of people, something I dealt with since I can remember, and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. My life was confusing. I felt like everyone had a rule book on how to live except me. I didn't know how they were doing it. How did people go through life without being scared and having to get high? Baffling to me. So that's going to go away? I was like, really? I'm in at this point, I'm in. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. All situations used to baffle me. So the fact that I could do it without drugs, with the use of this program, very exciting. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. So remember in step 3, we hand over things we can't control to our higher power, whether that's God or whatever you choose to call it. So it's starting to work now around step 9. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. How amazing is that to hear? I mean, that got me through my first 90 days, first year of sobriety. These promises were all I was holding on to. It felt like such an amazing thing to have the possibility of in my life that I just kept coming back. I literally kept coming back because of these promises. So this step is a crucial one for me, and these promises were huge. All of those promises have come true for me, and they started to come true when I was halfway through step 9. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? But in my experience, it worked. It was what happened. So I'm telling you that it worked for me. I don't know about anyone else. It did work for me though. Now, they don't all happen at the same time. You don't suddenly like, oh, I've done my step 9, everything's great. Some days the fear of economic insecurity will rise. Some days things will be baffling again. It's like a constantly changing landscape. But overall, all these promises have happened to me since I've got into recovery. It's not to say I don't still have fear. I do. It's not to say I don't still get depression. As you guys know, I do. But if I put the work in, these things are getting less in my life, and it's really starting to work. So this step is hard. It is hard. And I bet with anything in life, I've found the stuff that's really worthwhile tends to be hard, doesn't it? You have to give something to get something, I find in life. And this, I really had to put myself out there for step 9. God, it was really hard to think about doing. So what I had to do was I had to go through the list, okay, and just do it. I didn't obsess about it too much. My sponsor suggested that I wrote a letter to say what I wanted to say, so that when I got in front of these people, I could read the letter and then they could respond. Very importantly, you can't justify what you've done. You have to just say sorry. And that's really hard. That was really hard for me. Like, I'm sorry that I did this, but you did this. That's what I wanted to say to every single one of these people. I'm sorry I was like this to you, but you deserved it because you did that to me. Apparently, you're not allowed to do it. My sponsor didn't allow me to do that. He was like, you can't justify it. You just have to say sorry. And how can I make it better? That's all you have to do. So you have to think, you have to first acknowledge what you've done. And hopefully we discovered that in step 8 when we really thought about how it affected people, and we talked about it with our sponsors. Perhaps that helped me. What did we do? So then you have to own up to it. You have to cop to what you did. So let's say, for example, Laura's parents. Part of the step 9 is you have to go to any lengths, like with most of this program. So I was out of rehab a couple of days, and I flew from LA to Chicago to make amends on my own, because it's important to do these things face to face where it won't hurt the other person. So I knew I had to do it. I wrote a letter, I prepared myself, flew to Chicago. I wanted to have a little walk from the taxi cab to Laura's mum and dad's house, just to prepare myself. So I said, I remembered there's a place called the Jewel Osco supermarket in Chicago. So I told the taxi driver, the guy who took me from the airport to the suburb where they live, I said, will you drop me at the Jewel Osco so that I can walk? It's only a 5-minute walk. I'll prepare myself for this talk. I had my letter, got off at the Jewel Osco, and the taxi driver left, and it started to rain. Straight away started to rain. I went into a store to get some flowers because I wanted to give some flowers to Laura's mum, and I was nervous, so I thought I'll do the walk and it'll be fine, and I'll get myself ready on the way. Turns out there's a lot of Jewel Oscos in Illinois, and I went to one that was maybe 5-6 miles away. And I started to walk. I thought, this is fine, I'll just walk there. So I walked 6 miles in the rain with a bunch of flowers that by the time I got there were all wilted and covered in rain. I was like a wet dog. Turned up at the house like a wet dog with some wilted flowers. So that's not a great image, but that was a funny aside. That's what happened. And then when I got into the house, we all sat down and I said, I have a letter I want to read. And I pulled out the letter from my pocket and I just read the letter. And you'll find most people anyone's going to allow you to read a letter of apology. And it's a good way of keeping on track and not going into the conversation, just getting out your apology. For me, it's having a letter really helped, because I could just be like, okay, this is what I did and I'm sorry, and I promise I'll try and make amends, and anything I can do to make it better, please let me know and I'll do it. I thought that they were going to be angry and upset with me. I thought it was going to be, I felt like a failure. I felt just the worst person on earth. I felt so bad about what I'd done. And I was in bits, just emotionally, I felt like I'd really let everyone down. So I had to take a big deep breath and own up to that stuff. And it didn't go as I thought it was going to go. Like most of these step 9s, you build it up in your head as being this is going to go this way. And I found with my program, lots of the stuff that my head tells me isn't true. Lots of the stuff that my head tells me is just a lie. And I built these step 9s and I thought, I know how this is going to go. I know what's going to happen when I do these step 9s. It wasn't the case with any single one of them. They were amazing and loving. And I cried halfway through the letter. I was like, don't cry. And halfway through, I lost it, just streaming tears, and it was embarrassing. And I couldn't read the letter because there was tears and crying. Anyway, I got through the letter and the response was amazing. Just love and forgiveness. And that was an amazing experience, but it's not unique to that step 9, and it's not unique to my step 9s. My mum and dad were the same. I thought they were gonna, my mum and dad have always been very loving and very supportive. And the step 9 with them was very emotional and very, very loving. But I felt like with my mum and dad, it was important for me to just say sorry for the way I behaved and what I put them through. And Laura's step 9 with Laura, we went to a park, a meditation garden actually, out here in California, and we sat by the lake, and I had the letter for her, and I sat and read that again. The tears. It's hard to read letters when you're crying. Like a lot of these letters, I ended up crying. Not to say you will, maybe you won't, but I ended up crying through them. But it was the most amazing experience. Oh my God. Afterwards, you just feel this weight. It's just lifted. Like you've atoned is quite an old-fashioned word, isn't it? But that's what I felt like. And I felt all this darkness just leaving, and then just lighter. And this word serenity, peace. I started to feel peace, like it says in the promises there. So that was my experience with step 9. That's a couple of my experiences. I also had a step 9 with someone where I said, I'm sorry for all these things I've done. And they were like, I don't remember any of that. They literally, I'd carried all this guilt around. They didn't remember any of it. So there's some like that. In the case where sometimes with an ex or something like that, you can kind of manipulate this step to be like, oh, I can get contact with an ex by having to make a step 9. I was told that was a big thing that a lot of people do. So in those situations, that's an example of where making this amends could injure them, it could injure someone else emotionally, or you can't make a step 9 if it will put someone else at risk of getting in trouble, or you can't make amends if it's all about you. If you're going to get in trouble, you still have to do it. If you're putting someone else in danger, you can't do it. So there's lots of different situations where that might be true. With an ex relationship, you might emotionally hurt the person. So I was advised in that instance to write a letter and mail it. Now, that's not a get out of jail. Like some exes, when I did my step 9 the first time round, I had to go and physically make amends. You have to really say, am I letting myself off the hook by saying this will cause someone else pain, or will it really cause someone else pain? And this is where a sponsor is really important, because you need to take this on a case-by-case basis. Like, I can't tell you what that situation is for that specific person, but your sponsor will be able to say, yeah, you can still say sorry to that person, or you don't need to make any contact with that person because it's going to be painful for them. So that's step 9. Step 9 is an incredible step. Step 9 is where you start to feel different. Yeah, that was a really good one for me. And I love those promises. And when I first used to go to that meeting, the promises meeting I told you about, I would look up at the list of promises and go, wow, if that's true, then my life's about to change. And it did. So I advise you all to do this. Just don't think about it too much. You've done your step 8, you've got your list. Just go out and ring up people. I want to have a chat with you. Will you meet me? If they say no, go and talk to your sponsor about what to do. If they say no, you can't really, don't push it. And you maybe have to come back later, or you maybe have to make what they call a living amends, which is where you just behave differently to make amends to that person. But a lot of people will use these little get-outs like, oh, I don't want to make amends to them because they're embarrassed, so I'll just live differently. It doesn't work like that. You have to check it with your sponsor. So it is going to be painful, but then with pain comes spiritual growth, I've found. Pain for me is a signifier that something needs to change. So I love this step. This may be do I say that all these steps are my favorite ones? I can't remember, but this one really is, I think. So I wish you guys luck with this one. But remember, don't do these steps out of order. Make sure you've done 1 to 8. Make sure you have a sponsor before you do step 9. Don't go and try and make amends without running it past someone, because that can go really wrong. I tried to make amends to some people in my first week out of rehab before I had a sponsor, and it was just a mess. They were like, "What are you talking? What?" So don't make that mistake that I made. I love you guys. Thank you for coming with me on this journey. Life's funny, isn't it? Feeling good this week. How are you feeling? Let me know in the comments how you're doing. As I always say, thank you for keeping me sober this week. Why don't you call another alcoholic? Call someone who's struggling. Call an addict. I've had some contact with some newcomers this week, which I'm sure has helped with the depression as well. So, yeah. And perhaps this week we can all try and call someone that we know is struggling, or we think is struggling, and just try and be there for them without judging and without telling them they're an alcoholic or an addict. Just an idea. This is something I've been trying to do. What do you think of this one bit of makeup? Look, these 3 bits of makeup. I think I'm gonna do this. This is my look now. 3 bits of manky old makeup from the previous day. That's how I'm gonna look from now on. Sorry if that was distracting. I love you guys. Thank you for keeping me sober. Now we'll have a look at some questions, shall we? So remember to tweet me your questions at Stephen Hilton 23 with a PH. Sorry about that noise. That's the tumble dryer. Long story. Janine Pet Mummy on Twitter says, is it possible to be addicted to relationships? It 100% is possible, and there's 100% anonymous fellowship for it. It's called SLAA, and it's for sex and love addiction. Remember we talked about food addiction last week and how it wasn't really taken that seriously, but it was a huge issue. Same with SLAA, I think. It's a fascinating program. There is such a thing as love addiction, getting validation and feeling the hole in the soul with relationships. So there's everything like we've already discussed. The 12 steps work for it because you're using something external to fill the hole in the soul. So these steps work with anything that you're using addictively to feel better or to numb out. So there absolutely is a program for that. I may do a video on that program actually, because it is fascinating. Chrissy LLES on Twitter says, what exactly does a sponsor do for someone? A sponsor is like a mentor, like a spiritual mentor, I'd say. It's someone to run our crazy ideas past, because very often, like I said before, my head will tell me lies, and I'll be completely convinced that what my head is telling me is true, and it's complete lies. And I need to tell that stuff to someone who can be impartial and sit in front of me and go, don't do that, that's literally crazy, which is what my sponsors spend a lot of time telling me. It's just a person to run ideas past, who has knowledge of the program, who can see our craziness. And very often we can see addiction in someone else, but we can't see it in ourselves. So that's what the sponsor is, someone who can see our addiction. Thank you so much, you guys. And once again, this is like a meeting for me. You guys have kept me sober, and you've really helped me through my depression. Like, I had a little struggle with it over the last couple of weeks, and just doing these and reading your incredible comments and incredible support, it's amazing. You guys are the best, and I love you, and keep on going. Who is it that said, if you're going through hell, keep going, because on the other side there's redemption, there's resolution, there's hope. I felt that over the past 2 weeks. I felt like I was going through hell and kept on going, and now I'm out the other side. And I'm sure it'll happen to us all again. But it's good that we're talking. Take care, and let me know how you're getting on with the steps in the comments. Bye-bye.